Alright, y'all. Today, I don't have my tea because I was drinking my tea and writing, and I thought I was going to get done with my article a lot quicker than I thought it was going to be. It took way longer, and now it's 9:45. I think I did like 4 hours today on and off of writing that article and editing it. And I posted it on my Patreon, and tomorrow it's going to be on my blog too. The blog link is in the description, so if you want to read it, I highly suggest it. It talks about identity and what we talked about a couple videos before. Couple video couple videos before with identity and identifying yourself as a human with values. So I highly suggest it. It's the accumulation of all my thinking. But for today, I wanted to kind of go into some territory that I'm not too familiar with and just think through my thoughts on it and really just speak them aloud, so I'm almost arguing with myself on it. And that's consciousness. Granted, I don't think a lot of people or anyone really understands consciousness to a expert level. I guess the closest people would be neuroscientists and perhaps psychologists and psychiatric. Oh my goodness, my brain's fried. But definitely psychologists and neuroscientists. I'm neither of those things. Those are something I want to pursue in the future, but I'm going to dabble my hand in it. So the first kind of place I want to start is with Alan Watts and what he talks about as consciousness, as almost everything around you being conscious or has a consciousness. So that would be considered panpsychism. So, let's say a rock. A rock has some type of consciousness to it, and the river flowing would also be a type of consciousness or has some conscious to it. And I think for him, what he's arguing is that Alan Watts, as a philosopher, seems to believe more or that we ourselves are just a connection of this world, and it's almost like a two-way street of the world and reality is us and we're reality. So our consciousness is also an extension of ourselves and life around it. So I can definitely see why he would think that almost everything has a consciousness, even this pen right here. Because what he also talks about, oh my god, the light, it burns! But what he also talks about too is how everything has energy to it. So for example, let's say, I'm going to do it again, this pen. So this pen is really just a bundle of atoms tucked together so tight, right, and moving so quickly in between each other that it's impassable. And that's the energy the atoms are creating, makes it so I can't go through it. Whereas water, its atoms are slightly dispersed, still bouncing off each other, but not creating enough energy for me not to go straight through it. And then air is also a different type of energy, but it's dispersed, whereas the atoms aren't hitting each other. So that's why I'm able to go through it. And he also talks a lot about space and space being a part of us as well. One argument he talks about is that space, without space, there is no we, and everything around us can't and be, let's say, living, or there is no life, or there is no world without the space that is between objects. So, for example, the space between me and this laptop is part of what contributes to me being able to speak to you guys. Because if there was no space, well, my face would be in front of the camera. That's extreme. That's extreme example, but the space in between us allows us to kind of play in this world, to move and act. Without the space, then we're unable to execute those actions. So I guess as this video is more are talking about Alan Watts and what I'm learning about him, because I just finished his audiobook of do you do it, or does it do you? So I'm going to continue on that track, because consciousness, I think I need a little bit more time of like understanding what consciousness is as well. And I guess another reason why I wanted to talk about it too is that I saw that Tim Ferriss had a podcaster on who was a neuroscientist who worked with patients that have after-death experiences, and one of his quotes was that he's seen too many people whose brain were gone. They were dead legally and literally speaking, and then they came back somehow. Don't know. I need to listen to that podcast more to understand it more. But they came back and talk about having these ultra experiences, out of body. Well, not out of body, but just these experiences, even though their brains were not functioning and they were legally dead. So for that podcast as that Tim had, he believes that consciousness is something outside of our brain's control. We always think our brain is, or at least the general conception is that our brain is the one creating all our consciousness, our subconscious, our conscious, is our egos, everything. But what he thinks is that consciousness is separate from the brain, just because as these people who have these after death experiences don't their brain activity, there is no brain activity that they can point to say that the consciousness and what they're experiencing was real. But if his theory is correct, it would make sense, because consciousness would be something on beyond what the brain is capable of. And I was thinking a little bit about that too, if just as consciousness being outside of the brain. And it kind of sounds like meditation and what you do in meditation. And it's, well, Alan Watts explains what meditation is a lot better. But what I find with meditation is that you figure out you have two kind of brains. You have two type of minds: observing mind and what I call a monkey mind. So the monkey mind is all the thoughts that go through your heads that you don't have control over. So if I say, think of a purple monkey, you think of a purple monkey. It's not that you're consciously thinking of that monkey, but your brain does it, or your consciousness does it. Whereas the observing mind is the mind that observes all these thoughts and all your external environment, all your internal environment of the thoughts that go through. And with the observing mind, it really is just observe what you're experiencing, and that's it. So what want to connect that back to what the Tim Ferriss's podcast was theorizing, is that consciousness is outside of the brain, or is separate from the brain. It almost sounds like this consciousness is that monkey mind, the thoughts you can't and think, that the thoughts that continuously go through your mind that you can't control, and your brain, which is that observing mind of, okay, I'm conscious, or I have control over this, but I'm observing what is happening. And the brain is that gives you the ability to just observe what's happening with the monkey mind, and what the podcast guest calls the consciousness. So it's a rough theory. But that's kind of what got into my mind when he was talking about that, and I'm like, wow, that's really similar to a lot of like meditative practices. Buddhism talks about, Mark Manson talks about how to as well. So I'm like, it gets me thinking, and that's originally what I wanted to talk about this video. It's just like that weird connection of the monkey mind and this idea of consciousness being outside of your brain, and your brain being the observing mind of, okay, I'm observing all that's around me, all that's inside of me, all the thoughts, emotions, and going from there. And how your observing mind can be totally off, as in these legal deaths, and still your conscious and your monkey mind can still be going. So that is one aspect I want to get into, is the neuroscience and also the psychology. So after I do a lot of my traveling, so if I do a lot of my traveling, I don't know what's going to happen in the future, so I can't bet on it. But the plan is to do a lot of my world traveling, and then RV when I come back. And after that, I want to get into my neuroscience and psychology degree, master's and PhD, I would assume, something like that. And if I go overseas to Europe, the backup plan is, if I am running low on my funds and money, I'm going to come back and get my psychology and neuroscience degree, master's and PhD. I don't know if you guys are that interested in it, but I think it's pretty cool. And, I don't know if we'll ever understand consciousness as human beings, to be able to explain it with words that are or language, which is a very clumsy system to explaining. But I think we're making progress, just from what I've seen. Maybe not in my lifetime, maybe never, maybe 9 generations from now. Who knows if we ever understand consciousness. But, the work we do now will help future generations understand it a little better. Just like Newton and Einstein helps us to kind of understand the universe better now, and get us into like stuff like string theory, which I have no idea. I hardly know physics much, but that's kind of what I wanted to talk about. It was long, but I think it was good. A little bit of consciousness, a little bit of Alan Watts, and it's all good. Now, I won't be doing one tomorrow, so I will see you guys on Monday. Y'all stay classy, all right?